When her husband vanishes in a brutal dust storm, Elara Vance is left a widow, alone on a vast, unforgiving ranch known only as the Scab. Left with nothing but crushing debt and land everyone calls cursed, she must fight a ruthless cattle baron who wants her property for a mysterious reason. But buried beneath the dry, cracked earth lies a secret her husband died to protect, a secret that could save her, or be the very reason she disappears next. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching this story from. I'd love to know how far these exciting stories are reaching. And if you've ever experienced an inexplicable situation, share it with us. The world had ended not with a bang, but with a whisper of silt. For 3 days, the dust storm had tried to claw its way into the small sod ranch house. Now on the 4th morning, Elara Vance woke to an unnatural silence. The wind had stopped, but the air was still thick, the color of sulfur. She sat up, the rough blanket scratching her chin. Every surface, the table, the stove, the floorboards, was covered in a fine brown powder. It was in her mouth, grinding between her teeth. It was in her lungs, but the worst part was the silence. "Elias?" she called out, her voice cracking in the dry air. There was no answer. There had been no answer for 72 hours. Elias, her husband of 4 years, a man as quiet and stubborn as the Kansas plains themselves, had gone out to check the livestock line just as the sky turned that sickening yellow-brown. He'd tugged the brim of his hat, told her to barricade the door, and walked into the wall of grit. He never walked back. Elara forced herself from the cot. Her body ached with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. The ranch was silent. The 2 cows they owned were likely dead. The chickens buried in their coop. The world outside the one window was a brown, featureless void. She was a widow. A widow on land that everyone, including her own family back in Ohio, had called cursed. Elias had bought this section, 600 acres of high plain alkali flats, for pennies on the dollar. The locals in Harlan's Fork called it the Scab. Nothing grew here. The ground was hardpan, the single creek was brackish and undrinkable, and the wind, it seemed, never ever stopped. He saw something, Elias would mutter, staring at the horizon. They just ain't looking right. Now his optimism seemed like madness. Elara was alone, 30 miles from the nearest town, with no food, no water save the near-empty rain barrel, and debts at the general store she could not possibly pay. A week passed. The dust settled, revealing a landscape of total desolation. She found the cows, huddled and lifeless against a collapsed barbed wire fence. She dug them graves, the shovel ringing uselessly against the rock-hard soil. On the 8th day, a rider appeared. It was not a neighbor. It was Silas Croft. Croft was a man who owned the valley. He owned the bank, the general store, and the largest cattle ranch in the territory. He was a man who moved with an unhurried confidence, as if the land itself bent to his will. He dismounted, his tall frame blocking the pale sun. His boots were polished. His condolences were brief. "A terrible thing, Mrs. Vance. Elias was a determined man." "He was," Elara said, her hands gripping the rough fabric of her apron. "The prairie is unforgiving," Croft continued, his eyes scanning her ruined property. He gestured to the dead earth. "This land, it takes more than it gives. It's poison. It broke stronger men than him." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "I know you have an account at my store, and I know the bank holds the note on this deed." Elara felt the cold grip of fear. This was not a social call. "I'm offering as a neighbor to take this burden from you," Croft said, his voice smooth as oiled leather. "I'll clear your debt, give you enough for a train ticket back east. No woman should be alone out here." Elara looked at the ranch house, a structure of mud and grass she had helped Elias build. It was all she had left of him. "Why do you want it, Mr. Croft?" she asked, her voice quiet. "You said it yourself. The land is poison. A flicker of something, annoyance," crossed his face. "I absorb failed properties. It tidies up the map. My offer is generous, Mrs. Vance. It expires at the end of the week. Think on it. He mounted his horse, a fine black creature that seemed out of place in this barren world, and rode away, leaving Elara in a cloud of fresh dust. The escape he offered felt like a cage. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. Croft's words echoed in her mind. Why do you want it? He had thousands of acres of prime grazing land, fed by the only real river in the county. Why would he want the Scab? She lit a kerosene lamp, the low light casting long shadows. She had to find the deed to see what exactly she owed. Elias kept his papers in a small wooden chest beneath their cot. She pulled it out, the hinges groaning. Inside were receipts, the deed to the land and the banknote Croft had mentioned. The debt was staggering. She was ruined, but beneath the papers, tucked into the bottom lining of the chest, was something else. A small leather-bound ledger. It wasn't for finances. She opened it. The first few pages were notes on weather patterns, soil density. But then the entries changed. They became obsessive. July 14th. The alkali is a lie. It's a surface problem. The rock beneath is limestone. Porous. August 2nd. Followed the dry creek bed. The fissures in the rock. They breathe cool air. Even at midday, Elara's hand trembled. She turned the page. It was a map. A rough hand-drawn map of her property. But Elias had marked it with symbols she didn't understand. He'd focused on the back corner of the property, a small box canyon that was considered the most useless part of the entire ranch. In the center of the canyon, Elias had drawn a small blue X and written a single word, Telluris Latin. Elias had been educated, briefly before his family lost their money. Elara knew only a few words he had taught her. Telluris, of the earth. She remembered him now, riding out at all hours, coming home long after dark, caked not in dust but in thick dark mud. She had assumed he was digging a new well, but he'd always been evasive. Not yet, Elara. Almost. It's a secret. She looked at the banknote, then at the map. Silas Croft didn't want this land because it was worthless. He wanted it because Elias, her quiet, stubborn husband, had found something. And she suspected Croft knew it. A new feeling pushed aside the grief, a cold, sharp spike of anger. The dust storm, Elias's disappearance, Croft's immediate predatory offer. It wasn't an accident, she whispered into the dark. She looked at the map, then at the door. Elias hadn't just left her cursed land. He had left her a mystery, and maybe, just maybe, a weapon. The next dawn, Elara did not weep. She planned. She was no longer a grieving widow. She was an investigator, and this barren ranch was her crime scene. Her new routine was brutal. The mornings were for survival. She spent hours foraging for edible prairie turnips and repairing the chicken coop, hoping to salvage the 3 remaining hens. She hauled water from the brackish creek, boiling it for hours to make it palatable. Every task was a fight against the land, but the afternoons were for Elias. She packed a canteen, a shovel, and the ledger, and rode her old mule Gideon to the box canyon. It was a desolate place, a crack in the hard pan that looked like a scar. She found the X from the map. It was just a spot, indistinguishable from any other patch of cracked dirt and sharp rock. She began to dig. The ground was like iron. For hours her shovel sparked against flint. Her hands, soft from years of housekeeping, were blistered and bloody within an hour. "What were you looking for, Elias?" she'd whisper to the wind. "What did you find?" Days turned into a week. Her routine was set. Survive, dig, sleep, repeat. She found his tools, hidden under a tarp weighted down by rocks. A heavy-duty pickaxe, several broken shovel handles, and coils of thick rope. This was not the work of a man digging a simple well. This was the work of a man trying to move a mountain. She found his discarded lunch tins. She found a single mud-caked glove. She was walking in his final footsteps. The deeper she dug, the more the earth changed. The dry alkaline topsoil gave way to a dense, damp clay. It smelled of minerals, of deep earth, and it was cool to the touch. She was getting close. She could feel it. But she wasn't the only one who was watching. The pressure from Silas Croft began as a tightening knot. First, she rode to Harlan's Fork to use her last bit of egg money for flour and salt. Mr. Gable, the store owner who had always been kind, suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance," he mumbled, wiping his hands on his apron. "Mr. Croft? He's called in all accounts. I can't extend any more credit. I'm paying with cash, Mr. Gable." "Ah," he said, relieved. But as she left, he added in a low voice, "Be careful, Elara, he's watching that land. He's not a patient man." The isolation was complete. The town had turned its back. The next day, the true conflict arrived. She was deep in the canyon, examining a fissure in the rock wall that Elias had marked, when the shadow fell over her. "Poking for rabbits, Mrs. Vance?" Elara spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. It was Croft's foreman, a hard man named Jeb, and 2 other ranch hands. They sat on their horses looking down at her in the hole she'd dug. "This is my property," Elara said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "Is it?" Jeb spat tobacco juice near her boot. "Mr. Croft, he's a tidy man. He don't like loose ends, and he don't like folks digging holes on land that's practically his." He made an offer. "I haven't accepted," Jeb chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "The offer wasn't a suggestion. It was a kindness. And you're all out of kindness." He looked at the hole, then at the pickaxe in her hand. "Whatever fool thing your husband was chasing, it's over. He's gone. You should be too." "Get off my land," Elara said, her voice low and tight. Jeb's smile vanished. "We'll be back for your answer tomorrow. Mr. Croft wants that deed. Don't make us come and get it." They wheeled their horses around and galloped away, their laughter hanging in the dry air. Elara slid to the ground, her body trembling. This was no longer about debt. It was about force. She returned to her sod house at dusk, her resolve shattered. The threat was real. She was one woman against an army, and the message was waiting for her. They hadn't just visited her. They had visited her home. Her 3 precious chickens were gone. The coop was smashed to kindling. Her small, struggling vegetable garden had been trampled, not by cattle, but by horses ridden back and forth until the earth was pulp. They had left her with nothing. She sank to her knees by the ruined garden, the dust and mud staining her dress. They hadn't just killed her chickens. They had killed her hope. Elias was gone. The ranch was lost. She had failed. She would go to Croft in the morning. She would sign the deed. She would take the train and disappear. She spent the night packing a small bag, her movements mechanical. She packed her mother's locket, her wedding dress, and Elias's ledger. She paused, holding the book. She opened it one last time to the map. Telluris of the earth, he had died for this. He had vanished into a storm, trying to secure a future for them, and she was going to let that man, Silas Croft, trample his memory for a few dollars and a train ticket. Her trembling stopped. The fear didn't disappear, but it crystallized. It hardened into a diamond-sharp point of rage. She looked at the map, at the X, at the fissures Elias had drawn. "No," she said to the empty room, she wasn't leaving. Not yet. She grabbed the lantern, the pickaxe, and the last of her water. She didn't bother with the mule. She ran. She ran through the dark prairie, the moon a pale sliver. She didn't care if Croft's men saw her. She didn't care about anything except what was in that hole. She reached the canyon, her lungs burning. She lit the lantern. The light cast terrifying, dancing shadows. She looked at the map again, then at the rock wall. She hadn't just been digging in the ground. Elias's markings followed a crack in the wall, one that was almost invisible, filled with dirt and brush. She attacked the fissure with the pickaxe. She pulled at rocks with her bare, bleeding hands. She worked with a desperate, frantic energy. For an hour she fought the rock, and then the rock fought back. A section of the wall crumbled. A rush of rocks and dirt slid down, extinguishing her lantern and pinning her leg. She cried out, a sharp sound of pain and terror. She was trapped. In the dark, she lay there panting, the smell of damp earth filling her nostrils. She tried to move her leg. It was stuck but not broken. As she struggled, she felt something, a draft, a current of cool, moist air coming from the hole, and she heard it, a sound she had not heard in months. A sound that did not exist on this cursed land. Drip, drip, gurgle. With a final agonizing heave, she pulled her leg free. She fumbled in her pocket for a match, her hands shaking. The match flared. She was not in a hole. She was in an opening. A cave. She lit the lantern again, her heart pounding so hard it felt it would break her ribs. She held it high. The beam cut through the darkness. She was in a narrow tunnel that sloped downward. She followed it, limping. The sound of water grew louder. The air became sweet and cool. She turned a corner and the tunnel opened up. Elara dropped the lantern. It didn't go out. It landed on a sandy bank, illuminating a cavern so vast she couldn't see the ceiling, and in the center of the cavern was a pool, a massive, deep, crystal-clear pool of pure, fresh water. It was not a pool, she realized. It was a river, an underground river, flowing steady and strong, disappearing back into the earth. Elias hadn't found a well. He had found the source. This was the water that fed the entire valley. The water that Silas Croft's thousands of cattle depended on, the water he claimed was running low. He wasn't running out of water. He just wanted to own its very heart. He knew, Elara whispered, the sound echoing in the vast, wet darkness. Elias found it and he told him. And Croft, she understood. Croft hadn't bought the land in case it had water. He knew it did. He had likely convinced Elias to sell, and when Elias refused, Croft used the cover of the dust storm to remove the problem. She heard a noise from the tunnel entrance, horses shouting, "She's in here! I see the light!" It was Jeb's voice. Elara grabbed the lantern. She was trapped. She backed away from the entrance as two figures appeared. Jeb and behind him Silas Croft. "So," Croft said, his voice calm, but his eyes wide with a greedy fire as he saw the river. "He did tell his wife. A fatal mistake. You killed him," Elara said. "It was not a question." "I warned him," Croft corrected, stepping onto the sandy bank. "I told him this water was too important for one broke farmer. It belongs to the valley, and I am the valley." He refused. The dust storm was convenient. "Give me the deed, Mrs. Vance," Croft commanded, stepping closer. "You're tired. You're ruined. You're alone." Elara looked at the dark flowing water, then at the tyrant in front of her. She was not the same woman he'd met a week ago. That woman was a grieving widow. This woman was Elias's wife. "No," Elara said, raising her chin. "You have what?" Croft laughed. "You're right, Mr. Croft," Elara said, her voice clear and strong, echoing in the cavern. "The water does belong to the valley. That's why I invited them." Croft's smile faded. "Invited who?" From the tunnel entrance, a third man appeared. He was not a ranch hand. He was the sheriff, and behind him Mr. Gable from the general store. And behind him, two other small ranchers, men who had been slowly strangled by Croft's control of the water downstream. They were all holding rifles. "What is this?" Croft snarled. "I rode to town last night, Mr. Croft," Elara explained, her voice ringing with power, "before I came here. I stopped at the sheriff's office. I told him I knew what happened to my husband, and then I went to Mr. Gable. I offered him a deal. What if I could give the whole town water? Water you couldn't control." She had gambled that the valley was more desperate for freedom than it was afraid of Silas Croft. She had won. "She's lying," Croft yelled. "This is my land." "Not according to this deed," the sheriff said, stepping forward, "which is in Elias Vance's name, and now his wife's. As for what happened to him, I think we'll have a long talk about that." Jeb moved for his gun, but the click of 3 rifle hammers stopped him cold. Silas Croft stared at the water, then at Elara. He had built an empire on the illusion of scarcity, and this woman, with nothing but a sod house and a shovel, had just brought it all crashing down. His face for the first time showed pure, unadulterated fear. 1 year later, the land known as the Scab was unrecognizable. It was now called Vance's Spring. Elara stood on the porch of a new, small wooden house, built with timber freighted in by her grateful neighbors. The ranch wasn't large, but it was green. A proper deep well drilled directly into the aquifer Elias had found, irrigated a sprawling garden and a healthy pasture. Silas Croft was gone. His empire, built on water theft and intimidation, collapsed when his crimes came to light. The trial was short. His ranch was broken up and sold, much of it to the very farmers he had tried to ruin. Harlan's Fork was a boomtown. The new shared water source, managed by the Vance Water Cooperative, which Elara chaired, meant that for the first time the valley was truly prosperous. Elara walked to the entrance of the canyon. It was no longer a secret hole in the ground. It was enclosed by a respectful stone wall, a monument. A simple plaque was set in the stone. Elias Vance. He looked right. She touched the cool stone. The wind still blew across the Kansas prairie, but it no longer sounded like a threat. It didn't sound like loss. It sounded, she thought, like a promise. The rancher had left his widow nothing but cursed land. But he had also left her the secret. The past is filled with whispers, stories of resilience and courage hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be found. Here at Old World Whispers, we dig them up. If you enjoyed Elara's story and want to hear more tales of the hidden strength that built this country, please subscribe to our channel. Click that bell so you never miss a new chapter from our American past. We are so grateful to have you here. Until next time.